Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Marco Jure Show. It is Monday, October 13th, 2025. And again, thank you for starting off your week the right way by tuning in to today's show. To hear all the relevant, groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Please don't forget to hit that like button, follow the show, share with whomever needs to hear the truth to help our quest to unwoke America, if you will. Hope everyone's ready for the best hour, though, that radio has to offer, uncensored and ready to go. Today's show is going to be a lot of fun, so let's get right into it, shall we? First things first, happy Columbus Day. I want to say that to, obviously, all the listeners out there, all my paisans out there listening to the show. Without Columbus, obviously, there would be no New World, so thank you, Chris, for doing what you did. You know, I want to talk about, though, briefly, the genesis of Columbus Day and how it kind of all came to. You know, most people really don't understand that, how these things all took place and how they happened. Obviously, he gets called a slaver, a colonizer, all these other things. Much of which is pretty ridiculous given the time frame, and 1492, of course. To accuse him of doing anything different than anybody else from any civilization at the time would be ridiculous. Of course, we can look back in hindsight in 2020 and say, you know, we shouldn't have done some of these things. Regardless of all that, regardless of what you think about Columbus, he did something extremely remarkable. Now, if he hadn't done that, who knows if we'd even be here today? Nobody knows. But how did Columbus Day come to? That's what I want to ask everybody. How did Columbus Day actually come to? Well, you have to go back for a little bit of context and history, of course. Back in the early 1890s, there was this mass lynching in New Orleans. I believe 11 Italian Americans were executed publicly. One of the biggest in American history, by the way. I don't think we ever learned that in social studies. Just thought I'd share that part with you. But President Benjamin Harris declared a one-time kind of national holiday celebration of Italian heritage. And again, in an attempt to kind of mitigate the effects of what had just happened in New Orleans. And he called it Columbus Day. Columbus, of course, being the one that found the New World, of course, from Europe. And it was a one-time thing. And, of course, people moved on. Italians kept coming in droves, kept growing communities and what have you. But 50 years after this, in 14, my math's a little off. I'm doing Obama math, apparently. In 1942, during World War II, FDR labeled Italian Americans as enemy aliens. And he interned about 3,000 of them. You all remember the Japanese internment camps. You're told about this in, of course, your high school textbook. Nobody is ever told that there were roughly 11,000 German Americans or 3,000 Italian Americans. People of Italian descent that were put in these internment camps. We're never told about any of that, of course, just the earlier aspect of it. So, having that happen, what did he do as a result of all this? Well, he virtue signaled, of course. He ended up calling it Columbus Day again, calling it for a national holiday. And every year since then, America has been coming together on this day to commemorate Christopher Columbus's achievement in a celebration of Italian-American culture. That's what it comes down to. Of course, we're Americans first, but we are celebrating a particular culture on that day. Now, when there's been some back and forth, we know that, you had Indigenous Peoples Day replace Columbus because, he was a colonizer, a slaver. Obviously, he was a white man, so therefore, automatically, he's guilty for whatever. Doesn't even matter. But now President Trump, rightfully so, has called it again Columbus Day that we'll be celebrating today. So Columbus Day, a very good day. I think everyone could agree with that. It's obviously something that I think we should all be happy about. We should want to praise that. And yeah, I mean, there's not much more I could really say to you about all this, but I do want to play you something. And I was listening to, I was like, what can I play it to everyone that would kind of commemorate Columbus and, of course, sum up everything that is, important about all this. What could be so succinct in order to do all this? And I found the perfect clip for you. And I want to play it for you right now, so I hope you enjoyed this.
Look, you had to walk in Columbus's shoes to see what he went through. People thought the world was flat, for crying out loud. Then he lands on an island with a bunch of naked savages on it. I mean, that took a lot of guts. You remember when we went to Florida, the heat, and those bugs?
Oh, like it took guts to murder people and put them in chains.
He was a victim of his time.
Who cares? It's what he did.
He discovered America is what he did. He was a brave Italian explorer. And in this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero. End of story.
And that's all you really need to say about all that, folks. Very succinct and to the point. Columbus really is our hero, I'd have to say. Again, where do we know that we would even find the Americas at that point? Now, of course, we could speculate. Someone else would have kind of come around, maybe figured it out sometime. But who knows how things could have turned out? You have no idea. We have absolutely no idea. So without that, I think it's safe to say none of us would probably be here. And that would be a pretty tragic thing, I'd have to say. All right, moving on to other more important things. Just besides Columbus Day, of course, let's move on to what's happening now with the Gaza-Israeli ceasefire deal that's happening. Obviously, today we are seeing phase one of this Israel-Gaza ceasefire plan as the remaining 20 Israeli hostages are now being released and, of course, returned back to Israel. We're seeing that on Fox News. We're seeing the return, of course, the release of some of the proclaimed 2,000 Palestinians. Both hostages, prisoners alike were also released. However, there were no celebrations being seen or interviewed with the families because they weren't allowed to take place. Shocking, isn't it? Shocking. That was from Sky News, by the way, that reported that. And I want to say, the deal that was made about this hostage release, one of the first names on this list was Marwan Barghouti. And I've talked to you about him previously. And he's been one of these kind of central figures. He was at one time in the electorate in Gaza. And he's kind of been this kind of nationalist kind of figure that kind of Palestinians look up to. He's more of a leader to them. Now, he's been, I think, incarcerated for roughly 2 decades, much of the time in solitary confinement. But his name was on the top of this list. And shockingly, Netanyahu decided to take it off after the proclaimed agreement. Shocking, isn't it? Of course not. Why would it be? But right now we've got this facade of peace. Of course, it looks good. Of course, we're happy that the hostages are returned from both sides, of course. Still many more Palestinians, I think, need to be released. I think that should have been a provision in that. Anyone held without charge should be returned home. And it's a great day for the families of Israel who are getting their family members returned to them. And, of course, the Palestinians as well. But the show must go on, yes. So what happens next? That's the big part. Trump was in, obviously, Israel. He spoke to the Knesset as their keynote speaker. And I'm going to play a couple things there that he was saying. But let's all understand that, we have phase 2 we have to look at. We have phase 3. And they were vague. I told you this when I read this to you last week about each of these 21 points. Everything is pretty vague besides the hostage transfer. Everything else is kind of up in the air. Nothing's kind of set in stone. There's no timeline. There's no procedure in order to do this. It's just kind of like vague words. For example, phase 2, if it's implemented currently, we would see a security team enter Gaza. Now we know Israeli troops have been moving out as part of the plan. But the disarming of Gaza, that's the one thing I'm still struggling with. Is Hamas going to allow this disarming of the region, particularly them, of course? That was the words used in the condition. But this hasn't been agreed upon. And again, I doubt very much Palestinians or Hamas want President Trump, want Tony Blair to come in and rule over them. They want a independent state next to Israel. That's what they would like. Not a police state with surveillance run by, some of yours truly in America. We can think of certain names, I think. Larry Ellison. This whole police state tactic ruling over them. Look no further than the UK. Tony Blair. By the way, I found this out over the weekend. You're going to laugh at this. Tony Blair's kid has this big investment in this surveillance technology. And something like $300 million or so, I think is what it was pumped into this company that he runs. And of course, who's going to oversee Gaza? Tony Blair. There you go. The same guy that wanted the Iraq war. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's almost laughable, except it's not funny at all. But again, we have no updates on aid entering Gaza right now. We have no outcry from the press that 80+% of Gaza is lay in ruins. We don't even truly know the death toll, besides what we've been told. We know that there's roughly 100,000 dead civilians, much of them being civilians, some of them being Hamas. The overwhelming toll, I think something like 83% has been estimated, that's civilians. And the remainder, obviously, Hamas. But we don't know who's buried under this rubble, in the ruins. We don't know. So I ask you, what are the Palestinian hostages going home to? Because they're going to see a very, very different Gaza, I would have to say. Destruction, decadence, death, famine. Any chance at the freedom to do anything? And now we're going to usher in a international body to come in and rule over the Palestinians. It makes really no sense to me. I understand the idea, again, of, looking over a group of people, but we have nowhere to enforce the Security Council that they're trying to put in place here. And again, what happens if somebody breaks part of this ceasefire deal? What will be the ramifications and the consequence of this? Nobody knows. Does that mean the war goes on as continued? Nobody knows. I'm going to play you some clips, though, of Trump speaking. And I want to play this one. This is the first one, among many things, of course. And it's going to make you shake your head, I think. And it made me shake my head. But President Trump, I'm going to let you listen to it. I'm not even going to share what this is. You listen to this and we'll break it down. This is Trump speaking about Miriam Adelson.
But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
That's odd. So Miriam Adelson's there, listening to President Trump. She gave him $106 million in his last campaign in 2024. She's in the back, sitting there. She was obviously, she was actually born in Mandatory Palestine, by the way, in 1945. Husband's buried there in Israel. And she's there, and Trump makes this what it sounds like a joke, but it's really not that funny. One of your biggest donors prefers Israel over the United States? And we don't think that has any type of pull over President Trump? I think we're being a little too gracious here. Very odd. Very odd. And one thing I want to say, too. Trump is speaking here. I've been watching a little bit of it here and there. I've been listening to certain clips. I noticed behind him they have 3 Israeli flags. And they have absolutely no American flags. Now, every time Netanyahu comes to Congress, we have the American flag, juxtaposed right next to the Israeli flag, as if they're somehow synonymous with one another. We do this all the time with different leaders when they come. We drape both flags next to each other. If President Trump is supposed to be, the best friend Israel has ever had, why are we, again, using America that, again, funds their entire military? Without us, they wouldn't have a military. And in fact, without us, they wouldn't even be able to exist as a nation. That's how much we give to them every single year. And don't think I'm not going to go over some of the numbers of this war in just a little bit. But isn't it interesting? We're told, we're the greatest ally. They're our greatest ally. And yet, no respect for President Trump when he's speaking to have at least an American flag next to him? It's a bit telling, isn't it, folks?
Those are just a few of the reasons why I'm proud to be the best friend that Israel has ever had. And they all say it in the White House. They all say it. I guess it's true because everybody says it, baby. You said it today. Thank you. But as
Listen to this. Listen to this. The best friend, everybody's telling me I'm their best friend. It's fantastic. The best friend they've ever had. Okay, you're the best friend they've ever had. Yet no American flag next to you? He's going to go on and talk about the Iran deal now. Take a listen to this one.
President, I terminated the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, and ultimately I terminated Iran's nuclear program with things called B-2 bombers. It was swift, and it was accurate, and it was a military beauty.
Now, let's pause again. I mean, we've got to correct, obviously, things when they're stated, of course. But he goes on to say he ended the JCPOA. That was the Iran deal, okay? So the Iran deal prevented the Iranians from actually creating a nuclear weapon. Now they're out of this deal. So now they're not held to any type of binding agreement. And it's not being replaced with anything. In fact, we could have had, as I've said so many times before, we could have actually had a deal with Iran that America signed off on. They wouldn't enrich uranium past 3.5%. They wouldn't create a nuclear weapon, and they would allow U.S. nuclear weapons monitoring their nuclear power plants. I mean, this was probably one of the most sound, proficient deals one could make. And what happens? Israel bombs, then America decides to bomb them. There's no sign whatsoever that they have any type of nuclear technology. Now, it is questionable, of course, that they have uranium enriched to 60%. I saw that more as a bluff, to be honest with you. Like, hey, look, we could do this if we want, but we're not doing it. Because, again, there's no evidence whatsoever. Even the International Atomic Energy Association says they're not building anything. There's no intelligence. And this is coming straight from Tulsi Gabbard, who's the head of national intelligence, saying, hey, they don't have any nuclear weapons. You know, we're told we've got to attack right now, otherwise we're going to be in some type of nuclear war with them. I mean, it's just preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. And then we bomb a sovereign nation after Israel did. Yes, we did destroy their facilities, but did we destroy everything they had inside that allows them to be capable to do this? And the answer to that is no. And we know this because we have aerial footage of dump trucks leaving many of these sites. And by the way, the amount of uranium they had was not that much. You wouldn't need very much to get some of this out of there. Remove some of the centrifuges and what have you. So the idea that we've destroyed their entire nuclear program is pretty preposterous. We did kill some nuclear scientists as well as the lead negotiator, by the way. Makes you wonder, though. But again, this is the narrative they want. We destroyed them. We destroyed this threat. Let's move on now. We had to do it. We had to do it. Let's move on now. By the way, President Trump also urged President Herzog to pardon Netanyahu. I thought that was pretty interesting myself. Netanyahu, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's being brought up on 3 different charges, bribery being one of them. So odd that he would go in there and say all this to them, or obviously to the massive cheers from his party. But this is what we're listening to, right? Pardoning Netanyahu. Well, first of all, what do we have to do with that? That's his own government, his own thing. What does President Trump have to do with pardoning somebody in a foreign nation? Now, as again, people that understand due process, the rule of law, respect all that, we would say, okay, bring up your charges, let the case fall as it may. That's always been prolonged. This has happened back in 2019, by the way. And now we're trying to get get involved in this. I don't understand this. I don't understand this at all. To me, it was more of a rah-rah speech. Didn't really carry too much water to me. Again, I'm happy that we're pursuing peace. I just don't know how long this peace is going to last. I got to be honest with you. I don't know how long this peace is going to last. I'm going to talk about this too. I've got to share this with you. I mean, I find these things, I've got to tell it to you. This is their Minister of Defense of Israel This is Bezalel Smotrich. He's one of the Likud party members that's connected to the hip of Netanyahu. And he says international law does not apply to Jews. That's the difference between the chosen people and others. Now, hearing this, again, and Netanyahu went back after this deal was given to him. He went back and they said, Bibi, are you going to actually allow a Palestinian state? He said, no, I didn't agree to any of that. There's nothing in writing that I said we're going to have a Palestinian state. So expect part of the ceasefire plan, which again, the creation of a state of Palestine is in there. Expect part of this to be broken. This is what I'm trying to tell you. When it's broken, what happens as a result? Does that mean more war breaks out? I think so. I think that's what you're going to start to see. Now, again, if Netanyahu's saying no Palestinian state, if you have their Minister of Defense saying rules don't really apply to us, we don't have to sign in, anything we sign doesn't really matter, it's null and void. Yet we have a ceasefire agreement with them, expect it to be broken. Expect it to be broken at some point. Because that's what's going to happen. And again, I told you before, Netanyahu's never agreed to any ceasefire and actually kept his promise to it. So again, expect this to go out of control again at some point. We'll see how this, again, all plays out. We have Trump now in Egypt. He is signing on with many other EU leaders, this entire Gaza plan. But unless we know the provisions of what happens when this deal breaks, it means nothing. So let's say Israel, I'll just use it as an example, Israel violates the terms of this agreement and they attack again. What happens to them? Is Trump going to cut off aid to them? What is the ramification of all this? There's got to be some type of punishment, yet we don't know anything about it. We don't know anything about it. So while, again, I applaud President Trump for bringing peace, the stop of this, it makes me wonder, though. He sat down with the Arab leaders one time, presented it to Netanyahu, and he agrees to it? Why did this take so long to do then, if it's this simple to achieve this type of peace? Think of all the innocent lives that would have been saved in Gaza had this happened much earlier. It's been going on for 2 years. The amount of lives lost, again, I told you, is well over 100,000. Well over 100,000. That's just the low-end number that they're giving us right now. Yep. The family's destroyed. The infrastructure completely destroyed. I just told you, 83% of Gaza lay in ruins. Absolute ruins. No access to food, running water, electricity, mostly. Hospitals destroyed. No access to medical care. Banks destroyed. No access to currency. No access to provide any type of job. Unless, of course, maybe they have it on them prior. No type of deeds, titles to any type of land. So what's going to happen here? This is the big question to me. Well, how does this move forward? And when is it moving forward? We're all taking a little victory lap with this, exchange of hostages, which is good. I said that. I applaud it. I like that there's no killing going on right now. But what happens next? What is the trajectory? What is the timeline of this? We're told nothing about it. So again, very vague. I pray that peace lasts. But remember, a ceasefire is much different than a peace treaty. And again, if you already have one side saying, hey, you know what, we're not even going to consider a Palestinian state, I'll do everything I can to prevent it, then what happens to that agreement? What happens then? It ends. It ends. Think of what happens if Hamas decides not to disarm. What is it? Does we just resume the war? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. The Daily Caller has a good article, too, about what's happening right now. J.D. Vance confirms the extent of the U.S. military boots-on-the-ground involvement following Middle Eastern, it says peace deal. I call it a ceasefire deal. They're two totally different things. It's a ceasefire deal, folks. It's not a peace deal. Peace would extend to permanent, everlasting non-aggression. There's nothing in there that says anything of the sort. But Vice President Vance said that there are no plans for U.S. troops to be on the ground in Israel or Gaza after both sides agreed to the first phase of President Trump's ceasefire deal. The agreement involves both Israel and Gaza releasing all their prisoners, even though we know that Palestinian prisoners are not all released. Just look at, what's his name? Garbouti, That's what they want the most. Because, again, he's one of the biggest leaders of the people of Palestine. They refuse to release him. So what does this mean now? So we're not even holding up our end of the bargain after this. I just told you, he said after the agreement, we want this guy. And they said, we're taking him off the list. We're taking him off the list. So who knows if this is going to spark any type of controversy? Who knows? Who the hell knows? But anyways, the agreement involves both Israel and Gaza releasing all their prisoners and hostages respectively, and for Israel to withdraw its troops, which it has, to a designated position in the Gaza Strip. Vance said on Meet the Mess, Meet the Press, there you go, with Kirsten Welker, that while President Trump does not plan to put boots on the ground, the U.S. will monitor both territories to ensure the terms of his peace agreement are being followed. No boots on the ground. He's discussing that the U.S. Central Command is already kind of overseeing this, what's happening there. And they already have people, obviously, in their region, of course. They would simply monitor the terms of the ceasefire and, obviously, to ensure humanitarian aid is flowing. And again, that's one of my first things. When are you going to start allowing this aid in? You remove the troops to a certain position. We see that the Gazans are heading north to Gaza City right now. When is this aid going to come in? We're supposed to have 600 food trucks per day. Now, Welker challenged him at one point, stated that based on her question off of the, two U.S. officials telling the outlet that the U.S. military plan to send 200 troops to Israel to support the stabilization of Gaza. Vance had stated Sunday on ABC's This Week that that story had been misreported. So it looks like we're not going to put boots on the ground there. I doubt we would. But there is going to be some sort of oversight with America in this position. So again, my takeaway from today, it's a step in the right direction. Does it mean that there'll be lasting peace? No. I still do believe that Israel is going to be eyeing Iran. That's something that is definitely going to happen. And who knows when that's going to happen. But we still see attacks happening in Lebanon. I just watched yesterday the IDF roll over a St. David statue. Yep. That's wonderful, right? Christian cemetery destroying monuments in Lebanon. Oh, folks, this chaos. By the way, I wanted to share this with you before I move on to my next topic of discussion here. A Brown University professor, Linda J. Bilmes, I believe I say her name, Bilmes, stated that from October 7th, 2023 to September 2025, the U.S. military aid to Israel reached $21.7 billion. Not a bad sum of money right there, huh, folks? The U.S. military operations in both Yemen, Iran, and of course the wider Middle East also resulted somewhere around, let me see here. Yep, think of these 7 front wars. Anywhere from $9.65 billion to $12.07 billion. So that means the total U.S. dollars printed by the Fed, yours truly, the Federal Reserve, is estimated to anywhere from between $31.35 to $33.77 billion. We're just recently considering giving another $6.4 billion to fight this war that's supposed to be supposedly a ceasefire. And again, I ask you this. If it was so easy to sit down and say, hey, I want this war, what stopped Netanyahu from the start? Because Donald Trump did proclaim before he even took office, by the time he got into the office on January 20th, he wanted the war to be over with. He said, I want this solved by the time I get in office. And here we are almost 10 months later, and this war has continued on. So if it was so easy to sit down and say, hey, Bibi, listen, I got this deal. They have the Arab states behind this. Let's come together and stop this. Why did this take so long? What is any different right now? And here's the difference. There's a problem with all this. Number one, and again, you're never told this on the mainstream media, but the IDF is very fatigued right now. They are. They're in a 7-front war right now. And they're having trouble with getting more reserves in these certain regions, of course, to monitor and perform all these tasks, of course. Then Netanyahu wanted to go into Gaza with boots on the ground. And that was not working out well for them. A lot of times what was happening was Hamas would come up from their tunnels, And basically it was like guerrilla warfare. And they would subjugate the IDF and they would kill many people. Now, of course, the IDF took casualties as well, but a lot of these people were getting killed in this manner. And it wasn't looking good. And what's your next plan of attack then? I mean, they haven't defeated Hamas. They're not capable of defeating Hamas, it appears. So what's their next go-to? Again, 83% of the entire Gaza Strip lays in ruins, destroyed, null and void. What more can Netanyahu bomb? The rubble that's already sitting there? That, again, we're paying for all of it? The ceasefire allows them to rest up, recalibrate, get more arms, because they're in desperate need of it, especially after the 12-day war with Iran. That's another thing. That was just another ceasefire. They're already amping up, getting ready for another attack on Iran. But again, if it was so easy to sit down and do this, what prevented the Biden regime from doing this? And what prevented Donald Trump from doing this on day one? It seemed like it went pretty quickly, too. He sat down with them, said, here's this plan. We came together, and that was it. Why did this take so long to achieve if it was so easy to do? That's my question to you. Something else is going on behind the scenes. Something does not appear the way it should. Because if it's this easy, why would you wait so long to do it? There's no other reason other than you're recalibrating. You're resting up for something else right now. And I just read you what Smoltrich said. We don't have to agree to any international terms. We don't have to do this. We're the chosen people. So again, that just tells me any type of ceasefire with Iran and Israel could be breached. Doesn't matter. Anything with inside Gaza, that could be breached easily. With Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, all of it could change. In the 21-point peace plan, so-called, it says that there will be no attacks on Qatar. That could be a breach too, then, apparently. Again, when people tell you what they plan to do, what they want, you have to believe them. And it seems here, this is what they want. They've wanted this. They don't want a Palestinian state. So what, Hamas is going to agree to all this? Agree to all these terms? Adhere to everything? And then they're going to say, well, we can't really give you a Palestinian state because that would require Israel to lose land. They've said before, they're not going to give up the West Bank. President Trump said he will not allow them to annex the West Bank, yet they're allowing people to go in and build new settlements right now. So that's not in the agreement. So that probably is going to continue on as well. This is why this vague plan doesn't seem to really hold too much water for me. And again, I champion the idea of peace, that the fighting is stopped for right now, that innocent people are being reunited with their families on both sides. But if they're not going to hold up their end of the bargain of this deal, and they're flat out already calling that there's never going to be a Palestinian state, you've heard this from Danny Danon too. You've heard it from Netanyahu multiple times. Now we're hearing it vaguely from Smoltrich. We don't have to adhere to anything. So even if they sign this, they're selling us, hey, we don't have to do this. Believe people who they are when they tell you who they are. That's all I got to say on that. So something else is happening behind the scenes, folks. That's all I'm going to try to relate to you, that something else is happening. And it's only a matter of time before we figure out what that is. But Iran's ready now. They know what they have to do. The Houthi rebels are ready still. We haven't defeated them. By the way, we spent $1 billion trying to destroy them, and how'd that work out for us? That's in this number here that I'm looking at right now of almost $33 billion we spent just in the Middle East. That's not even talking about the $300 billion we spent in Ukraine. We spent a lot of money these last couple of years, folks, all on foreign aid, and look at the wars that are going on as a result. Still absolutely no end in sight. All right, let's go on. This is one for my Second Amendment friends here that's very important to each and every one of us. This is the Firearms Policy Coalition. I just saw this over the weekend. Again, it's shocking to me that this is being presented right now. There was a case called Reese versus the ATF, and it was a challenge to the federal handgun ban for 18 to 20-year-olds. And again, I have to laugh at this. So you're saying a kid can go and join the army, operate any type of firearm whatsoever, but an American citizen cannot? So the down low of all this, get a load of this, it says the federal Second and Fifth Amendment lawsuit challenging the federal ban on the sale of handguns and handgun ammunition by any type of federal firearm licensees to adults under the age of 21 years of age. So that in itself is pretty shocking. Taking away your right as a legal adult in America and an American citizen. But it gets even worse. It gets even worse. Listen to this. Pam Bondi, the, head of the DOJ, our attorney general, our leading law enforcement officer, a senior legal figure in U.S. politics. Yeah, I can't really have to read this to you. She actually secured a federal court order compelling a major gun rights organization to hand over its full membership list. Now, while some of you say, well, what's the big deal, Gervais? Who cares? If they didn't do anything wrong, they have nothing to worry about. I just want to make sure. Why do they need this for this case, by the way? Nothing would indicate that they need a membership list. What does this have to do with anything? This is standing up for and advocating for your Second Amendment right as an American citizen. Now, this unprecedented decision has obviously sent shockwaves through conservative circles. Many of these supporters, the critics alike, are questioning whether or not this move aligns with the constitutional values that this party has long championed. And, of course, the movement that has obviously once stood behind Pam Bondi. Right? Pam was supposed to be great. She's supposed to be, Miss Constitution. My God. We're told how smart she is, all this. Yet she's advocating that a gun organization hand over its membership list. Why? And for what reason? Again, she's working behind the scenes with the plaintiffs on this, is what it sounds like to me. Excuse me, not the plaintiff. She's working with the defendants on this. Look at this. Look at this. Yeah, she's working on behalf, really, of the ATF. This is what's going on right now. And this is why I'm so against these gun registries, by the way, too, in various states, because they can just turn them over to the federal government, which has absolutely no right doing any of this. That's a big problem. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes saying, what's the big deal? Come on, it's just, membership list. They probably want to make sure everything's, up to date. There's that transactions are, that was one of the things. They said there could have been, certain transactions that were illegal or something. Irregularities and, of course, fundraising, membership operations. What the hell has that got to do with anything? Seriously, what the hell does it have to do with the case in and of itself? And, of course, they tell you, well, it's not to target individual gun owners. Now, of course, despite these assurances, for anyone with a brain would sit here and say, they're pushing for this private data disclosure, and anyone should have deep concerns about this for their privacy, for government overreach, and again, for ideological consistencies. She's actually pushing the case through the federal court without congressional approval. And again, this has ignited accusations such as executive overreach, too. So there's so many things right now this administration is doing that is really destroying their base. Do you really want to lose your Second Amendment advocates? I don't know where anyone would go. Surely not going to go to the left. But we need people that follow the Constitution. That's what this comes down to. That's why I want to read this to you. This is your federal government trying to get membership data on the people that are involved in these organizations in this case. So, and rightfully so, people are very mad. But now other people are saying, well, Gervais, come on. They're not actually going to, it's a Trump administration. They're not going to target gun owners like the Biden administration did. They're not going to look at bank records from, Bank of America and what have you for people that were in January 6th. No, none of that's going to happen. It would be crazy that would happen, that the government would spy on its own people. Well, let me remind you of one thing before we move on. And again, if the government gets a hold of this, just because the Trump administration might not look into it doesn't mean that another administration doesn't come in and start looking at these things and starts targeting people. Now, we saw the Biden administration illegally target pro-life people that protested at abortion clinics and things of that nature. And again, we saw this under the Obama administration. 2013, the IRS targeting controversy. Remember that? Oh, yeah. Revealed that it had selected political groups applying for tax-exempt status for intensive scrutiny based on their names or political themes. And who led that? Lois Lerner. Yep. She opened up the case, started targeting people that were members of the Tea Party. So now the initial reports describe these selections of nearly exclusively conservative groups. Obviously, anyone with the word Tea Party in their name. Now, according to Republican lawmakers, the liberal-leaning groups, and of course the Occupy movements, had triggered additional scrutiny, but at the lower rate, a much lower rate than obviously the conservative groups. So there you go. We've seen our government do this before, once they get these lists. So again, it's not shocking to sit there and say, you know what, this isn't right. They have no right. First of all, the federal government has no right to make any law against the Second Amendment, let alone looking at membership lists, looking at gun registries, looking at anything. That's why I'm so opposed to this. Because they could take it, they could target you. They could take it and say, you know what? Yeah, you're in this group. We saw these guns you have, and you're very vocal on your social media. All this can be linked into one thing, into a social credit score, if you will. And again, I've talked to you about the social credit score. They've already got it working in China. They're trying to get it working in other nations right now. That's why the UK is pushing for digital ID. Once they start getting these lists of people, they can start easily creating algorithms. They can easily store the data in certain ways. They get them to target you specifically, monitor what you do. And again, if you think it's crazy, it's not, because they can easily do all this. And don't give them any regard for, obviously, the Constitution. They trample all over that every single time. So there's that. So I wanted everyone to be aware that your federal government is trying to get membership lists, in particular, firearm associations. There you go. I mean, it'd be absurd. It'd be like the NRA handing over its membership list to the Biden administration. Absolutely appalling. Absolutely appalling. Can they release the Epstein list too, by the way? Am I allowed to say that? Well, whatever. I'm going to say it anyways. When are we going to get these lists? There's a list. Yeah, that's what the Firearms Policy Coalition should say. We got the list on my desk, Pam. I'm going to go look at it soon. I'll get it over to you. Hey, there was no list. Sorry, Pam. We don't have it. We don't keep records of that. Sorry, Pammy. Don't have it. Nope. We don't have it. That was just a Democratic hoax. Tell her it's a Democratic hoax. She'll understand what that means. All right. This one's going to make you scratch your head. And this makes no sense to me, too, by the way. It says here, Pentagon will build a training facility for Qatari pilots in Idaho. Why the hell are we building a military base to train Qatari pilots in Idaho? Why are we doing this? Again, I have no idea why we would send in foreign nationals to be trained in the United States and then send them back. Why would we not just train them in Qatar? That doesn't make any sense to me. We already have a military base there. Yet now we're going to be building a military base in America where foreign nationals can come to be trained? It makes no sense to me, folks. Really doesn't make any sense that we're going to be wasting money on this. Pete Hegseth, the proclaimed Secretary of War, made the announcement during a visit to Qatar's defense minister. Said that the facility would be built at the Mountain Home Air Force Base and would host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase the lethality and interoperability. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. We're supposed to be talking about peace right now. President Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize, and yet we're talking about war, of course. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be ready, but what the hell do we have to do? What does it have to do with Qatar? Seriously, why does it have to be here in the United States? A unique camp training Qatari pilots. Now, of course, they're selling it off as the, arrangement isn't unusual. Pentagon officials noted that similar facilities have been set up for other allies for decades, and the Idaho base already hosts a fighter squadron from Singapore. Oh, wonderful. I love how we're trading the world with our, secrets and whatnot. Yep. I get it. It makes absolutely no sense to me why we do this. Why wouldn't we just train them there? Why can't we do that? Why do we have to bring people here and do this? We have 800 bases all around the world. Why do we need to do this here in the United States and build another one right now? It just seems very odd to me. Seems very odd that we would do this, especially at a time like right now. So I wanted to share that with you because, it makes absolutely zero sense to me. And again, based, on military operations or what have you in the Middle East, it just seems very, very odd to me. Especially at a time when things are very intense with Iran. I'm trying not to put so many things together, but to me, that's just the way I view these things. Qatar is a big ally in the region. And are we training them for some type of aerial operation in the future? Again, I don't know. I don't understand this. Why we have to do this in the United States. Makes me wonder. Really does. Oh, by the way, I forgot to bring this up just earlier. So I'm going to go over it now because why waste the time talking about Gavin Newsom? Gavin Screwsome. Yep. There he is. This is in Breitbart. It says Governor Gavin Newsom signs a Glock ban legislation into law, designating the most popular pistol a machine gun. Wow, Gavin, so clever. By the way, he was on some podcast. I forget what podcast it was. I forget the guy's name. And the guy gave him a gun. He goes, "This is illegal in California." It's unbelievable. He's such an idiot. He's trying to say that he's not against the Second Amendment. Of course he is. Of course he is. He's going to ban a particular firearm. But on Friday, Governor Gavin Newsom, a dummy from California, signed in the Assembly Bill 1127, a.k.a. the Glock ban legislation, into law. So now, I guess if you're a Glock owner like I was when I was in California, you're now a criminal, according to the geniuses in Sacramento. Now, the National Shooting Sports Foundation noted that the Glock ban will take effect on July 1st, 2026, banning the sale of new Glock brand pistols and Glock-style clones. Completely unconstitutional, by the way. The government has no right to tell you what type of gun you can own, by the way. That should be number one. Maybe Gavin doesn't understand the Second Amendment. I don't think he understands it. Because I believe he swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. And in that includes the Second Amendment. Maybe he doesn't understand what shall not be infringed means. I don't know. But now this Glock ban is obviously a Democrat-sponsored legislation. It's being pushed through, fashioned as a response to the use of Glock switches, which again is illegal, by the way. And what a Glock switch really is, they're federally prohibited plastic pieces that can be affixed to the rear of the Glock side, and basically allow the pistol to shoot as a full automatic. So right now the gun is a semi-automatic. That means you pull the trigger once and a bullet dispels from the barrel. You pull the trigger again, another one comes out. So we understand this. Now a fully automatic means you pull the trigger and that will just simply empty the clip. It'll keep firing over and over and over again. That's what that means. So now the Glock switches, which are widely popular with gang members, street criminals, all the people Gavin Newsom says that are his people, of course. And therefore, California Democrats are banning the new sales of one of the most popular handguns ever made, the Glock pistol. And again, they're pretty good guns. I liked my Glock. It was a very good gun. Now, on May 12th, 2025, Breitbart News reported the language of the Glock ban legislation, noting that Democrats secured the ban on Glocks by labeling them as machine guns. Machine gun convertible pistol. That's how they're selling this. Now, the gun is not sold to you this way. You have to illegally modify the weapon to make it do this. And by the way, just so we're clear on all this, anyone can make a firearm even from basic materials, just so we're all aware of that. Just so we're aware of all this. This is how stupid this is. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, as sure as I'm sitting here today, that the criminals in California will say, you know what? Gavin Newsom is right. It's time to stop using these guns to convert them into fully automatics we're going to put these down. Yep, we're going to stop doing this. We're going to illegally get our guns from somewhere else. That's what we're going to do. We're going to uphold the law right now. Yeah, right. Okay. So just wishful thinking, I suppose. But, it prohibits your legal right to own a Glock if you'd like. Now, a machine gun convertible style pistol, as any semi-automatic pistol with a trigger bar that can be readily converted by hand or with common household tools into a machine gun by the installation or attachment of a pistol converter. Yep. As specified, and of course, the pistol converter as any device or instrument that, can be installed or attached to the rear of the slide of a semi-automatic pistol. So what this means is they're kind of going through how these schmucks do all this stuff. And it replaces the back plates and interferes with the trigger mechanism, therefore allowing and enabling the pistol to shoot automatically more than one shot by a single trigger function. So that, again, it just shows you how it transfers from being a semi-automatic to a full automatic. So there we go. So they're explaining all this, but again, you could do this with pretty much any type of gun. Anyone can do this stuff. That's the stupid thing about this. Do you honestly think criminals are going to stop doing this? Or gang members are going to stop doing this? I mean, it's just laughable. It just really is laughable. And I would make $1 million bet with each and every one listening to the show right now that any of these jerks that have these guns probably didn't obtain them legally as well. Just thought I'd share that part with you as well. Just a hunch they didn't legally obtain their weapons. Again, more language from the bill says that the bill would expand the above definition of a machine gun. This is how they're doing it. They're trying to label a Glock firearm as a handgun, as a machine gun, to include any machine gun convertible pistol equipped with a pistol converter, and thus prohibit the manufacture, the sale, the possession, or the transportation of a machine gun convertible pistol equipped with a pistol converter. So in other words, a new Glock pistol is now a machine gun, as per the legislation that Newsom signed. So, again, I don't know if there's going to be a gun ban, simply, of any new firearms being released, or if they're going to confiscate the old guns. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And again, this is going to hurt Glock as well, because people are going to say, you know what, I'm not going to buy this gun. I'll just simply buy another one. Oh, by the way, before I move on and move away from the schmuck that is Gavin Newsom, by the way, who's completely destroying California, let me just say this to you. He just signed into law. This is not being reported pretty much anywhere, so I'll read this to you. And I warned you about this not too long ago. But Newsom just signed into law this nightmare bill, AB 495, into law. So anyone who's listening in California with kids, especially kids in public schools right now or will attend public schools, take a listen to this, please. And I hope you understand what's going on here. But this AB 945 allows any adult with fifth degree, I don't even know what this means, fifth degrees of relation. I don't even know what that means. What does fifth degrees of relation mean? Nobody knows. All they have to do is use a one-page form to get guardianship-like powers over someone else's minor child, including their living arrangements, their school enrollment, their medical, their mental decisions as well. And it gets worse. Parental signature not required. There's no vetting, there's no fingerprinting, no background checks of the adult coming in to make these decisions or taking possession of your child. I mean, it's absurd. They could say, hey, I'm living with so-and-so. I need to pick them up from school. Sign this, sign that. Boom, there you go. Here's the kid. Have fun. I mean, this is absurd. This is absurd. This is criminal. I told you before, he is one of the most anti-parental rights governors this nation has ever seen. This creep, this putz, this loser, this bum. Look at this. No parental signature required, no vetting, no fingerprinting. And again, people are thinking, oh, that means, I don't know. My cousin come pick up my kid. They just had to sign. No. This is something so different than all that. And by the way, when anyone has their kid picked up from school in California, you have to have them on an emergency contact list as someone that could take the kid already. And usually what will happen was when that person gets there, they'll say, so-and-so's here to pick up, little Susie. Is this okay? And they'll have the parent say yes or no to this. And they'll check IDs, all that. By the way, they'll have to sign the kid out. Now this isn't happening. Now this is just some random person can claim they know your child and they're coming in to pick up the child or take the child or sign off on something for the child. It's just really odd. It's just really weird. And the parent has no idea this is happening, by the way. No idea. That's the sickest part about all this, too. There's no oversight. There's no follow-up to make sure that the child is safe. I mean, it's scary. It's really, really scary that this is happening right now in the state of California. So I wanted to share that also with my many California viewers that are listening. Please send that to someone you know in California if they have children in public schools. And I don't know. I really don't know how this moves forward in terms of a legal sense. You basically have no control over your children. It's just another way to get your kids out of public schools in California, folks. They're already 49 out of 50 and reading, writing, and arithmetic. Why are you keeping them there? It makes no sense. Get them out of there. Get them out of there. Homeschool them. Do something. Do something. I mean, it's just ridiculousness. But don't worry. Breitbart also tells us Gavin Newsom has now signed a bill to build reparations. Bureaucracy. Yeah. That's going to make California a much greater state, I have to say. Governor Gavin Newsom has approved legislation establishing a new state agency tasked with administering programs for descendants of slaves, marking the latest step in his years-long effort to advance reparation policies despite ongoing political and fiscal challenges. Well, the fiscal challenge would be he's going to be at about $72 billion worth of debt by the time he leaves office. The state is bankrupt, and yet he's putting together a coalition of people to look at what? People's ancestry? To see if it equates with the descendants of slaves? In a state that never had slaves, by the way, folks, just so we're all clear on that. California was entered as a free state. Did not have any type of slavery in it. So again, why would the state of California in 2025 be paying out reparations of taxpayer money to people whom are never slaves in America in a state that never had slavery? I'll let you try to figure that one out. Again, he's trying to look for political points. That's all he's trying to do. He's trying to appeal to the low IQs who focus in on stupid stuff like this so he can run in 2028 and say, look at me. I believe in diversity. I believe in correcting it too. Look at me. I'm going to correct the wrongs. There we go. There we go. Yeah. He's going to do his little hand gestures. Yeah, I got a hand gesture for him right here. Look at this. Anyway, by the way, one more thing that's just sickening, by the way, kind of referring back to AB 495. There's another thing this sick creep Gavin Newsom and another sick creep wrote back in 2020. This was signed into law, SB 145. And just so we're clear on this, folks, this could happen. What I'm about to tell you. It modified sex offender registration laws to provide judicial discretion in cases involving certain sexual offenses with minors, aiming to eliminate discrimination against LGBTQXYZWTUV plus minus negative divided sign individuals. Now, what does this mean? Well, the lowdown of it all is essentially the law applies to cases involving minors age 14 to 17 years of age, where the adult is involved in this illegal act with the child is within 10 years age difference. So let's say a 22-year-old was with a 14-year-old. They're now giving the judge the discretion to whether or not this individual needs to register as a sex offender. It's sick, isn't it? Absolutely sick. So they're trying to change. So that, I mean, again, with this law coming out right now, and with people like this being put back out on the streets, they don't have to register as a sex offender. They could come in and say, oh, I'm here to pick up so-and-so. Sign the name. Oh, yeah, I'm, the dad's cousin on the other side. There we go. Boom. Then they take the kid. I mean, this is how sick this is. This is how sick this is. This is how disgraceful this is. And illegal. But look at this. Equity in treatment. The bill aims to create parity in the legal treatment of sexual offenses involving minors. Why do we need that? If you commit a sex crime with a minor, you should be held to the full extent of the law. And they're making it so it's, I don't even know. They're getting them off the hook for this? They don't even have to register as sex offenders? Now, right now, the bill only goes to 14-year-olds to 17-year-olds, but, in time, you're going to see them try to drop that down. And, of course, it was introduced by the disgraceful, disgusting piece of human excrement, Scott Wiener. Yep, no one should be shocked about that. But this is what Gavin Newsom just signed into law 5 years ago. Now he's signing a bill that anyone can come take your kids from public school, folks. This is scary. Scary and sickening to me, I have to say. I mean, it really is. It really is. So I wanted to read all that to you today. I thought all that was extremely important, especially for my California listeners, and I know there's many of you out there. So again, I wanted to just share all that with you today, and I wanted to get through all that because you need to get this information out to people. They need to be aware that this is happening, and this is what could happen in the public school systems in California. So I just wanted to reiterate that, teach everyone. It's very important to understand that. Folks, thanks for being here with me as always. Thanks for tuning into the show. Hope you learned a lot from it. Hope you'll share it with some friends to start waking people up. Let's all hope that peace is consistent in the future here, and that as Trump pushes for peace, that it's lasting peace. Folks, thanks for being here as always. I will catch you tomorrow on the next Mark and Dre show. Until then, be good. Make sure you're productive today. Make sure you keep your house in order. Make sure you're staying aware on everything that's happening around you as well. Don't forget, I'll be here tomorrow. I hope you will be too. Until then, have a good one. Stay blessed. Stay great. See you tomorrow.